Actually, he attended the mathematics and to study. So he has kindly agreed to be with us today. So we have special welcome for him. So I request Ashika to introduce and give people the Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Once again, I'd like to welcome everyone to our Sunday Feast program. Today, as Prabhuji said, we have a very special guest, His Grace Rohinipriya Prabhuji. Prabhuji did his bachelor's in medicine and bachelor's in surgery from Barangi G.G. Bhoi Government Medical College and Sassoon General Hospitals in Pune, India. And in the early 90s, he came in contact with Iskcon and joined the Iskcon Pune temple as a full-time brahmachari. Then in 1995, he moved to Iskcon Chowpatty in Mumbai, where he served as the director of Iskcon Youth Forum for many years and was also a member of the Temple Management Committee and the Committee for Spiritual Vision. In 1996, he started traveling to Aurangabad in addition to his services in Mumbai, and he also now counsels and guides many people, especially youth, and spreads Krishna consciousness all over the world by his practical and mesmerizing spiritual discourses, especially in North America, where he regularly visits the USA, Canada. Prabhuji has also been distributing the message of Bhagavad Gita to thousands of students in India, and overall is a huge inspiration to many youth and professionals all over the world. Currently, he serves as the General Manager for Iskcon Aurangabad, and we're very lucky to have his association here with us today. So once again, I'd like to welcome His Grace Rohinipriya Prabhuji and hand it over to him. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. I just want to be sure that I'm audible and visible, because I think I just joined in online and I couldn't check on that. So if everything is all right, then I could continue.
Everything is good, Prabhu.
Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahiyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. First of all, I would like to thank the Iskcon Ottawa temple management for giving me this opportunity to serve all of you, and I'm indeed very, very grateful and happy. And it feels very uplifting and it's very inspiring when we have an opportunity to glorify someone, especially if we have an opportunity to glorify devotees. a serious practitioner of spiritual norms, a spiritual practitioner, had once approached an advanced personality and was concerned about certain attitudes or a certain attitude or a certain personality or characteristic that one had previous to coming to spiritual life. Was concerned about this particular characteristic, this streak, you may say, in one's personality. And was feeling very repentant about having displayed that quality in one's life previous to coming to spiritual consciousness or to spiritual to the path of spiritual knowledge. Previous to one's coming to the path of spiritual knowledge, one has committed or one has knowingly or unknowingly done acts or has had thoughts that causes a lot of confusion and causes a lot of turmoil in one's life. So putting it shortly, these qualities have been accepted as being detrimental to one's health, mental and physical. Negativity or unhealthy competition, emotions of jealousy, unnecessary greed, etc. So these being over possessive, being obsessed. So these are certain traits or these are qualities that are accepted to be unhealthy for both for our physical as well as mental existence. And this is pan-global. This acceptance is like it's global. We cannot even say that there are rare exceptions to these to the exhibitions of these negative qualities. There are none, practically none, no exceptions to this. One and all, everyone agrees that for a healthy state of existence, one must try and overcome these challenges or overcome these urges which bring forth such a negative emphasis in relationships like pride and arrogance and greed and envy, etc. And not only that, but one must also try and reorient oneself, or one must try and again be born again, have another birth, metaphysically speaking, another birth, metaphorically speaking, so that one can exude a good amount of self-confidence, one can exude positivity, qualities and feelings of compassion and kindness, etc. So this sincere practitioner had concerns about one's life prior to coming to spiritual practices. So he approached the advanced personality and he asked a specific question. He said, there have been so many ways that I may have acted such that it creates more confusion and doubt and a hostile atmosphere. I specifically want to ask you, because most of that can be overcome if one repents. But I specifically want to ask you, what should I do about the urge of the tongue? My tongue has got so used to criticize others. My tongue has become so used to pointing out others' faults or being judgmental just to prove that I am better than another person. What should I do with this tongue? Because it seems as if I have my own mind and the tongue has its own mind. It seems as the tongue is functioning on its own. So how should I control my tongue? How should I overcome this urge for the tongue to speak very critically when it is not required, when it is harmful, when it is hurtful? What should I do about it? And the person, he answered his question in the form of a metaphor. He said the only remedy for poison is nectar. So the practitioner was still not able to understand, did not have a clear answer. So he looked expectantly at the saint, the advanced spiritual personality. And the saint, seeing his lack of clarity, seeing the lack of clarity on his face, the saint explained. He said that when we use the tongue hurtfully to hurt another person by criticizing them, then it is similar to drinking poison. However, when we use the same tongue to glorify others for their genuine qualities or for their, at least for their ability or for their quality of being truthful or being honest, or at least being very thoughtful, if we glorify them for these healthy qualities, and we make it a practice to use our tongue to glorify, then we are helping the tongue drink nectar. And this nectar will counteract the poison that has spread throughout our consciousness. The poison of being critical towards everything and everyone, with the hope that one can be proven to be the best person around, with the hope that everyone would bow down before us and hail our presence as being the Supreme One. So that can be countered, this poison that has spread all over, all throughout our consciousness, day in and day out, can be overcome by practicing this quality of glorifying others. They could be, this glorification could be of people, it could be of objects. In Sanskrit, that is called as Vyakti Vishesh, Sthana Vishesh, Padartha Vishesh. It could be glorification of places or glorification of just hypothetical situations, whatever hypotheses that are put forward, as long as even these hypotheses help one be progressive in one's spiritual journey, it can be glorified. Over glorification, just as over digestion, is not recommended. Sometimes one may feel that, what if I just try and use this ability to overdo it, use this facility to overdo it. Whenever we try to overdo something, there is a subtle element of wanting to be noticed. So anything that is genuine helps us keep the focus on the object that is being glorified rather than ourselves. So the art of glorification is an important aspect of, or it is an important tool in every sincere person's kit. And if we are trying to be sincere in a Krishna consciousness, which is a very important and huge responsibility, then it is all the more important, it is all the more necessary, it is all the more mandatory, if you will, to be able to gain some expertise in training our tongue to glorify. A small star or asterisk to kind of word of caution is, genuine glorification is healthy, over glorification can be hurtful too. So how do we define genuine glorification? Well, the definition is very subjective, it cannot be objective. But the basis, the principle of proper glorification is to notice, to be aware, to be conscious. If you're conscious, if one becomes conscious of the greatness or the mysticism of Krishna, the mysticism of the Supreme Lord around us, through objects, through places, through persons, the mysticism of Krishna, it surrounds us, the mysticism of Krishna, even within us. That instigates the natural tendency the soul has to glorify Krishna. And one would just want to be a part of that glorification. One would want to personally exhibit through words or through thoughts that act of glorification. So being attracted to, or being awed by, or being completely overwhelmed by the mysticism of Krishna, the wonderful, just like there's this chapter in the Krishna book, Wonderful Krishna. So Krishna's glory, Krishna's greatness, or his sweetness, or both, that is the underlying principle of genuine glorification. So anything that gets connected to Krishna helps one have clarity, helps one understand that particular moment in truth. And as soon as it gets disconnected from Krishna, then the veil of the illusory energy covers our vision, and we again fall into temporary, momentary ignorance. The clarity is lost. The main theme or the topic for today's discussion was to hear about certain personalities who are so wonderful that it behooves one to glorify them. They have their qualities or their existence has been tested by time, and it has now been established. There is every possibility to be completely amazed by who they are, and there is not even a speck of an opportunity to be confused by any of their activities. This is why when we have an opportunity to read about, to hear about, or glorify great personalities of the past, it is very, very safe. It is very, very healthy. But does that mean, and I use the word but because I could have said however, but is, I guess, more emphatic here. But that does not mean that we should not feel safe glorifying the present too. That does not mean. We can always find ways to glorify people, places, objects in our present existence. At the same time, the glorification of the Lord, the Lord's pastimes, the glorification of devotees, or hearing about the glories of these personalities, glorification of the holy places, the dhams, hearing about their glories. These are time tested. There is absolute clarity about the nourishment that we achieve from hearing these glorifications, and there's practically no scope for anyone to be confused or misled or have misconceptions. Having said that, we will now try and describe some of the facts or some of the life activities of two great personalities that have come down through generations to us in the present time in the form of their biographies or in the form of whatever little is known about them. And the two personalities that I'm going to speak about today are so less mentioned in our history that some of us may be only aware of them by their names. In my own practice of Krishna consciousness, over 3 decades now, I still have to come across somebody who has been initiated and has been given the name of these saints. There must be, and I am a finite being. In my own experience, this is what this is what I know of. I haven't come across devotees who share their names as Das or Devi Dasis. And these two personalities are Bhugarbha Goswami and Kasiswara Pandita. They are very prominent figures of our Gaudiya history, and the Vaishnava calendar would mention their appearance and disappearance days. In the month of Kartik, both of them are remembered. In the month of Damodar, especially today, I think so is the day when we remember them. This is the 14th day of the bright moon phase of the month of Damodar, and we remember them. Now, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the original personality of Godhead. And I make this statement because I think I'm giving this presentation in a temple environment, online virtual presentation. And most of us must be aware of this fact that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the original personality of Godhead. He is a Supreme Lord who has accepted the mood of his most beloved devotee and has descended to this material realm to re-establish religion, to take care of his devotees, and to transform the hearts of those who are still ignorant of their own spiritual existence. According to our history, our theology, our understanding, the Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the same Sri Krishna who is the son of Yashoda, who has come with the mood of Srimati Radharani and also the kanti or the texture, the effulgence of her bodily form. So he has both the mood of Srimati Radharani and the effulgence of Radharani's transcendental form. So Krishna is, his bodily effulgence is darkish, he has a darkish complexion, whereas Srimati Radharani, she has a more golden complexion, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also is golden complexioned. However, he is Sri Krishna himself. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's his life, his activities have been chronicled in many great epics like the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, the Chaitanya Charita, Chaitanya Mangal, many other kadichas, many other writings. And in the later half of the previous century, the life and activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was spread all over the globe by one of the greatest spiritual ambassadors of this generation, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Very succinctly put, he brought the timeless wisdom of the Vedas tinged with the mercy and with the compassion, the audarya, the magnanimity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the Western world, and then he rebottled it and brought it back to the Eastern world. His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is also glorified in the month of Damodar. So Srila Prabhupada, he took these ancient texts, whether they were written in Sanskrit or whether they were written in the Bengali script, in the Sanskrit script, which has the Devanagari script, or in the Bengali script. He took the scriptures and he translated them, and he also, wherever needed, provided his own perspectives, his own purports, his own understandings, and gave us in the English language these epics as Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, translated and purports given by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So he also gave us the Srimad Bhagavatam. He gave us also the other scriptures like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, etc., etc., etc. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which has been translated and commented on by Srila Prabhupada, we hear that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took to the renounced order of life in his early 20s. He was 24. And he moved to the holy town of Jagannath Puri and took up residence there at Jagannath Puri, which is in the province of Utkal, or Oriya Desh as it was known as then, present day state of Orissa in India. He spent about 24 years of his life as a sannyasi in Jagannath Puri. However, not all of that, or not all of his 24 years was spent staying in Jagannath Puri. So the first 6 years was spent in travel. So he traveled over South India, he traveled to Vrindavan. And then for the rest of the 18 years, most of his time was spent in Jagannath Puri. His tour of South India lasted about 2 years. Having done his tour of South India, called as the Dakkhan Bharat Yatra, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he returned back to Jagannath Puri, and he was sitting in the room that had been offered as his residence by the king of Jagannath Puri. He was sitting in his room this room is called as Gambhira. So he was sitting there in Gambhira, and a very effulgent personality of humble demeanor approached him. He walked in through the door. He offered his obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and introduced himself as Govinda, the personal servant of Ishwara Puri Goswami, Ishwara Puri Maharaj. Ishwara Puri Maharaj was the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Govinda was a disciple and also a very intimate personal servant of Ishwara Puri Maharaj. Ishwara Puri Maharaj had left this mortal world a few years ago, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had received information about it. He had gone into Samadhi. and a few months ago, basically. And here was Govinda in Gambhira. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that his spiritual master's disciple, his own god brother, was there in the room with him, he was very happy to meet him and have exchanges with him. Govinda said that I have come here to serve you. During his final days, before Sri Ishwarapuri Maharaj went into Samadhi, before Ishwarapuri Maharaj, he ended his earthly pastimes, he instructed me to come and serve you. He instructed me, he enlightened me as to your eternal form, who you are. He enlightened me on that. And I know that you're Sri Krishna personally. Come down in this form, you have come down as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You are the Supreme Lord himself. So Ishwarapuri Maharaj, he told me that you should go and serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I've come here to serve you. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was concerned about some protocols. Although Govinda was, he led a very renounced life. However, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu formally had taken up to a renounced order of life. So he was a sannyasi. Govinda was right in trying to serve a sannyasi. However, even if one is a sannyasi, one has to be careful that one does not accept service from one's equals, especially one's god brothers or god sisters, who are the disciples of one spiritual master. So there are certain norms, there are certain protocols. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was concerned that how could he accept service from Govinda. By the arrangement of the Lord, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, a very respectable gentleman, whom Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally accepted as his superior and would listen to him. And he also had accepted that relationship. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya would also lovingly treat Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his very own. So Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya appeared there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he put forth this dilemma to Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya that Govinda is here and he has brought this message from our Guru, Ishwarapuri Maharaj. So I have a dilemma. What should I do about it? And in the Bengali text of Chaitanya Charitamrita, this exchange between Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is revealed as thus. Tahare apan seva karaite na yuyaya Guru agya diya chena ki kari upaya. As such, it is not befitting that the Guru's servant should engage in my personal service. Yet my spiritual master has given this order. What shall I do? Bhatta kahe Guru ragya hoy balavana Guru agya na langhiya shastra pramana. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya said, the order of the spiritual master is very strong. The order of the spiritual master is unavoidable. It has to be accepted. The order of the spiritual master is very strong and cannot be disobeyed. That is the injunction of the scriptures, the shastras, the revealed scriptures. And then he quoted from an ancient text. This text is that describes the glories of Lord Ram. Just as there is an ancient text called as Hari Vangsha that describes the glories of Lord Krishna and the dynasty in which Lord Krishna appeared, there is another glorious text that is called as Raghu Vangsha, which describes the appearance of Lord Ramachandra and the dynasty in which he appeared and his activities. And personally, Lord Ramachandra, he spoke about this to Mother Sita. So these are Lord Ramachandra's own words. Nirvicharan Guru Ragya Maya Karya Mahatmanah Shreyo Hevam Bhayatyascha Mama Chaiva Visheshatah. Translation: the order of a great personality like a father, in brackets, spiritual father, must be executed without consideration because there is good fortune in such an order for both of us. In particular, there is good fortune for me. So he was speaking in terms of King Dashrath's vows. But here, the implication is that the Guru, the spiritual master, is also one spiritual father, and therefore a father who gives us birth by giving us this body, or a spiritual father who gives us birth by giving us the spiritual consciousness through the revealed scriptures, both of their orders should be followed, especially if the order has been received from the spiritual master, from the Guru. After Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya had given this pramana, had given this reference from the Raghuvangsha, where Lord Ramachandra's words have been inscribed, have been noted down, Sarvabhaum Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was none other than Lord Rama, than Lord Ramachandra himself. He embraced Govinda and he engaged him in the service of his personal body. He allowed him to do personal services. Govinda mentioned that the similar order had also been given to another disciple of the name Kasiswara Pandit. And this is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hears about Kasiswara Pandit in Jagannath Puri. According to Vrindavan Das Thakur, who reveals the glorious pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the great epic Chaitanya Bhagavat, he says that Kasiswara Pandit, and it appears that it is the same Kasiswara Pandit, the son of Vasudeva Bhattacharya, who lived in the town of Serampur and in those precincts. So the same Kasiswara Pandit, as a young man, would come to the house of Srivas Thakur and participate in the pastimes at the house of Srivas Thakur. And the same Kasiswara Pandit also was present when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited the house of Sridhar Kolabich. So these are the references from Chaitanya Bhagavat. So a question could arise in our minds then, how is it that Kasiswara was with Ishwarapuri Maharaj? And when did that happen? So the reference to Kasiswara Pandit going and serving Ishwarapuri Maharaj is not revealed. However, he must have taken shelter of Ishwarapuri Maharaj and served him. And Ishwarapuri Maharaj had instructed both Govinda and Kasiswara to come and serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Govinda was asked by the devotees at Jagannath Puri that what kind of service would you render to Ishwarapuri Maharaj? And Govinda said that he would render personal services. He would massage the body of his guru, and he would cook for him, or he would serve him prasad and So the devotees felt that Govinda could render similar services to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when it was inquired from Kasiswara Pandit that what was the services, since Kasiswara Pandit had a very well-built body, then he would serve as the personal bodyguard of Ishwarapuri Maharaj. Now, saintly personalities and having bodyguards makes us wonder that saintly personalities having bodyguards. Well, a bodyguard, the this is the English translation of the word, the Bengali word or the Sanskrit word of sevak. So his seva, his service was that he would hold back crowds and clear up pathways for Ishwarpuri Maharaj to go places. When Ishwarpuri Maharaj would be in a crowd, he would try to hold back the crowd so that Ishwarpuri Maharaj would not suffer from any kind of discomfort. So he wouldn't when he would hold back crowds, he would be very careful to see that the crowd was also not in any kind of discomfort. That is an art. And people who are heavily built, well built, if they're properly trained, then they know this art of giving some space to people that they serve and the crowd that is around them. So Govinda was very, very humble and at the same time very strict in serving, in seeing that his service to Ishwarpuri Maharaj was properly done. And he was very good at it, very good at it. So Kasiswara Pandit, he had requested his spiritual master to bless him to have a tour of the pilgrimage places, the holy pilgrimage places in Bharatvarsha, and then he would come to Jagannath Puri to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Kasiswara Pandit, he arrived after a few days to Jagannath Puri. And after that, his service was to see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have his privacy. His service was that he would sometimes be the personal assistant. So people would come up to him and ask him if they could have audience with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he would be very kind and compassionate in dealing with all of them. And at the same time, he would also be strict wherever needed. So people loved him. All the residents of Jagannath Puri, they loved Govinda, they loved Kasiswara. They were completely, they had such good relationship with both these devotees. Kasiswara Pandit especially loved to serve prasad. Chaitanya Charitamrita mentions that whenever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have prasad served to the community of devotees or to the bystanders, or to the crowd that had come to visit him or had come to see Lord Jagannath on the Rath Yatra cart or at the temple, wherever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had the opportunity to distribute prasadam, Kasiswara would be in the forefront to serve prasad to all the devotees. Since he was very well built and he was very sturdy and he had a lot of physical strength, he used all of that to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and serve the desires of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and serve the devotees and well-wishers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Many years passed. Govinda would render, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would, on special days where about 500 years ago, it was not easy to have access to Jagannath Puri because the modes of transport were very limited. But on special occasions, people would walk from hundreds and thousands of miles around, kilometers around, to come to the holy temple of Sri Jagannath Dev in Jagannath Puri. So on these days when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go for the darshan, to go and see the beautiful form of Lord Jagannath and Lord Baladev and Subhadra Devi. Kasiswara Pandit would make that journey very, very easy for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, would make that walk through the throngs of crowd very easy for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because whenever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would step out of his room, the Gambhira, people would be eager to see him, to touch him, to be touched by him, to receive his blessings. So the crowd would come surging in, and Kasiswara and his team would see that Lord Chaitanya's desire to go and see Lord Jagannath and his walk to the temple of Lord Jagannath was unimpeded. And at the same time, all the well-wishers and all the fans of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were also very happy seeing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Govinda, he performed this task so wonderfully that he received a lot of blessings from almost everyone. They were so happy with him, and they would just everyone would just praise him for the way he served Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also let people have access to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is one incident where which is very interesting. So this on occasions like this, Kasiswara Pandit would render his service. However, especially during the Rath Yatra, Kasiswara Pandit would see to it that Lord Chaitanya, when he was dancing, the thousands upon thousands of people who would come surging onto him would be kept away. For this, he would need the help of other devotees too. So during Rath Yatra, what would happen is, Lord Chaitanya would, when he would begin dancing, at one point of time, very briefly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would form 7 groups of people doing kirtan and dancing for the pleasure of Lord Jagannath. At one point of time, all of these 7 groups would converge, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would dance with all of them surrounding Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So 3 circles would be formed around Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so that the Lord could dance comfortably. The 4th circle would be formed by Nityanand Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, and their associates, which would have Mukunda and Vakreshwar, and all of them would be in that the inner circle. This circle was surrounded by the devotees from Jagannath Puri, like Kasiswara, and there would be Raghava, there would be Kashi Mishra, and these devotees, not Kashi Mishra would be, but these devotees, Vaninath would be there, and their associates would form the 2nd circle around the inner circle. And in the 3rd circle, the outside circle would be formed by the king of Jagannath Puri, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya would sometimes be there because he was a personal advisor to the king. Many a times he would be in the inner circle because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu respected him a lot. But Kashi Mishra would be there, Tulasi would be there in the outer circle. These were the superintendent of the Jagannath temple, Sri Jagannath temple, and the Podicha, the supervisor of the Jagannath temple, and Harichandan, the personal assistant of the king of Jagannath Puri, King Pratap Rudra. This year, the king had made a lot of efforts. This was after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come back to Jagannath Puri from the South India Yatra, and after a few almost a year after that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would now travel to Vrindavan. So between these 2 travels, this took place. So Govinda had come, Kasiswara Pandit had come, And the king was expressing his desire to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and have audience with him, and that wasn't manifesting for various reasons. On the day of Rath Yatra, the king has there's a protocol that the king has to serve Lord Jagannath as his street sweeper. So the king of Jagannath Puri takes a broom in his hand and he sweeps the street upon which the Lord, the Supreme Lord, Lord Jagannath, and his brother and sister would travel sitting on their chariots. So the king has to personally sweep the entire way. And this is the one of the most important duties of the king of Jagannath Puri, especially on the day of the Rath Yatra. So Maharaj Prataprudra was performing this service with such emotions, such intensity, because he was also by then he also had this really intense desire, or there was this intense need that he wanted to have the personal audience of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he was very emotional while doing that, and very focused. It was as if the king was in deep meditation as he was sweeping the street in front of Lord Jagannath's Ratha cart. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu noticed that. He noticed it personally, and also as the Lord within the heart of every living entity. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Paramatma noticed the intent and also the actions of King Prataprudra. And by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's potency, in this Rath Yatra, something interesting happened. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu broke through that cordon. The first cordon was broken. The second cordon was broken. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing as if he was completely intoxicated. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reached the third cordon of devotees and he stumbled. And Nityanand Prabhu wasn't there, because Nityanand Prabhu was he was ecstatic by Lord. This was all under the influence of Lord Chaitanya's potency. He was ecstatically dancing, and Kasiswara wasn't there. Govinda wasn't there. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had stumbled, and he stumbled right into the arms of the king, and the king held him. This was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrangements to give his mercy to King Prataprudra. And that is a beautiful story. It is very well narrated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I would request all the devotees to read that personally. So Kasiswara in one way failed, but within his failure was also the success story of King Prataprudra. And everything was orchestrated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Lord, there's a prayer. This prayer is also, the mood of the prayer is also reflected in Srila Prabhupada's writings. It is reflected by so many devotees in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. In fact, it is reflected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. And the mood of the prayer is that, my dear Lord, you are the supreme puppeteer and we are simply puppets in your hands. So please make us dance and perform the way you feel best. And this consciousness is really very helpful. And unfortunately, it is not so easily available, this facility or this quality to be able to pray to the Lord with deep feeling is not so easily available. It is quite a rare gift, uh, so to say. Um, it would have been wonderful if this quality, if this was available freely in our malls, or at some stalls around the world. You could buy a little of it and every day nourish oneself by reciting this prayer or getting into the mood of this prayer. That, my dear Lord, you are the supreme puppeteer. We are simply puppets in your hands. We would love to perform the dance that you engage us in. We would love to do that. So Kasiswara Pandit was made to dance according to Lord Chaitanya's desire. One day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting with Sri Gadadhar Pandit and a few other devotees in a temple where Gadadhar Pandit would worship his personal deity of Tota Gopinath, of Gopinath. So today that temple is it is kind of on the outskirts of Jagannath Puri, not really, but it is kind of towards the ocean, some distance away from the Jagannath temple, this Tota Gopinath temple. So he was there with Sri Gadadhar Pandit and a few other devotees, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was wondering that, or he was feeling separation from Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, whom he had sent one after the other to Vrindavan. Both of Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis were brothers, and they had come at different times to Sri Jagannath Puri, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had encouraged them to go to Vrindavan, and they had gone to Vrindavan, and it had been a few years. And he had given them certain instructions, and he was wondering as to how they were and what were they doing. And a messenger came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with a message for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the message was sent by Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami said in that message that by your grace, the deity of Govinda Dev established by Sri Vajranabhaji has been discovered at Gomati Til or Gobatil, a place in Vrindavan. And please send us your blessings and instructions so that we can serve Govinda Dev here in Sri Vrindavan Dham. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became immediately very ecstatic, and he went into this internal mood of ecstasy. And all the devotees were stunned. Everyone was so happy to hear that Govinda Dev, who had been lost to the eyes for thousands of years practically. Vajranabh had established these deities about 5,000 years ago, and then they had been lost for those couple of thousand years since any generation of devotees had seen Sri Govinda Dev's form. And now, about 500 years ago from today, the deity had been discovered. Beautiful, beautiful deity of Sri Govinda Dev. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came back to his external consciousness, his Bahya Chetna, and he had tears in his eyes. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had these ecstatic symptoms, and when they subsided and his eyes were, the tears had stopped, he got up. Immediately Kasiswara and Govinda also got up, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu indicated to Govinda, please give me some time. But he took Kasiswara along with him. And in a private place, he told Kasiswara Pandit, Rupa Goswami has been blessed. Rupa Goswami has, I am so pleased hearing this news from Rupa Goswami. However, he is going to need a lot of help. You need to go to Vrindavan Dham, and you must carry these instructions for the worship of Govinda Dev from me to him, and you must take some paraphernalia from here to worship Sri Govinda Dev. And every single word that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying, and every single sentence that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was completing, it was as if for Kashishwar, it seemed as if his heart was being crushed to pieces. He started crying, tears. And he folded his hands and he fell down at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he cried and he cried. And then right from there, he lifted up his face and he looked at Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, his beautiful form, and he said, "Please don't punish me by sending me away from you. How can I survive without being in your presence? The order of my spiritual master is to serve you. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. I would not be able to sustain my life being away from you." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bent down. He personally wiped away the tears flowing from Sri Kashishwar's eyes. He embraced him. Tight embrace. Kashishwar's emotions subsided and they were replaced by ecstatic feelings. Happy. Kashishwar felt very happy. His heart felt soothed. And Lord Chaitanya said, "Come, Kasiswara." And mystically, the Lord manifested a small form, a metal form, expanding from his own transcendental form. This metal form, which is a deity, expanded from Lord Chaitanya's own form. Kasishwar could visualize this, that this is an expansion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. And this form was a golden form of Krishna, standing in this threefold bending form, his Tribhanga Lalit form, with a flute touching his lips. And he said, "This is Govinda. Non-different from me. Whenever you feel separation from me, you look at this form. You see this form, you serve this form, you hold this form close to your heart, and you'll immediately feel my presence. I'm non-different from him." Kasishwara was shocked. He had been crushed because of his feelings of separation. Then Lord Chaitanya embraced him and he was happy, and he is shocked again. Kasishwara says, how do I believe that this form is the same as you? Here, when I was with you, I would serve you prasad. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "All right, Kasishwar, serve me prasad right now." Immediately Kasishwar forgot everything else and he brought prasad. The nature of a servant is to serve. Somehow or the other, Kasishwar, he was like in a daze. As soon as he heard Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking him to serve prasad, Kasishwar Pandit immediately gave up his all of his other thoughts and emotions and went and brought prasad for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya, he arranged a place for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to sit down and have prasad, to sit down and honor prasad, to eat prasad. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down, and to Kasishwar Pandit's great amazement, the deity of Govinda also sat down. And as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was eating prasad, the deity was also eating prasad. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looked up at Kasishwar Pandit and he said, "Are you satisfied now?" I am in a very personal way coming with you. Rupa Goswami is very dear to me, and I want to bless him, and I cannot trust anyone else but you. So please, Kashiswara, I trust you. With a heavy heart, Kashiswara took that deity of Govinda, and because this deity had personally expanded from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being non-different for him from him, this deity is called as Gaur Govinda deity. Gauranga Mahaprabhu manifesting as Govinda. Krishna playing the flute. And he brought that deity to Vrindavan along with the instructions and some cloth to serve the deity of Govinda Dev and other paraphernalia. And Rupa Goswami was so happy to receive him. He welcomed him, he offered him respects because practically he was like a spiritual master to Rupa Goswami. He was Lord Chaitanya's personal servant. Rupa Goswami was very, very respectful towards Kashiswara Pandit. He made all arrangements for him to have a comfortable stay. And later on, when there was a beautiful temple built for Govinda Dev, Kashiswara Pandit, he established the proper worship of Govinda Dev within the temple, according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions. And as soon as the worship of Govinda Deva began, Kashiswara Pandit placed the deity of Gaur Govinda to the right of Govinda Dev. And to this day, the deity of Gaur Govinda accompanies the original deity of Govinda Dev. Today, Govinda Dev is in the town of Jaipur, and in the town of Jaipur, we would see the deity of Gaur Govinda too. Very interestingly, one day, when Kashiswara Pandit was in Vrindavan worshipping, he was meditating on Lord Krishna's pastimes. He felt this deep, very powerful separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he became practically mad. And he started running in this direction and that direction and started falling to the ground unconscious. He was practically mad with love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And finding no solace, he fell at the lotus feet of his deity of Gaur Govinda. And to his amazement, the deity transformed into the beautiful form of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu with his transcendental effulgence and his smile and his beautiful lotus-like eyes. And Kashiswara felt relieved. Many years later, Kashiswara Pandit, he took up Samadhi in the place that is called as the Chausat Samadhi Sthal. The Samadhi place, the 64 of 64 saints. Actually, at one point of time, there were 64 Samadhis there, but today there are more than 64 Samadhis. This is a place where there is a beautiful well, personally dug up by Sri Krishna using his flute. And Kashiswara Pandit would come to this place, and it is not very far away from Govinda Dev temple, the old Govinda Dev temple that was built during Rupa Goswami's times in Vrindavan. It is just a 2-minute walk from there, and Kashiswara Pandit would come here and meditate. There's a wonderful story about this place to Venukup, but that is where we'll find his Samadhi, his resting place in Sri Vrindavan Dham. Although I was supposed to speak about Bhugarbha Goswami, I think I have used up my time. So if all of the devotees at Iskcon Ottawa would excuse me, maybe I could speak about Bhugarbha Goswami at another time. Is that all right? So could I stop here and ask for any comments or any other reflections or questions?
No problem. We are very happy that you're going to come back again and give us another talk about Bhugarbha Goswami. It's wonderful. So we are waiting to hear from you.
Thank you very much. So please let me know what could be done? Are you going to proceed to the next program?
Yes, Prabhu, today is a special day, so we're going to have a special aarti now for Tusi and Sadhgam Sheila together. We're going to perform an aarti for them. And then afterwards, we will have a little short account of the glories of Kasiswara Rani, followed by Damatrashtakam prayers.
So could I take your leave then? Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
We thank you, Prabhu, and thank you so much. It's a very, very nice account of amazing.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Mahaprabhu and here about Kasiswara Pandita. It's very, very trending actually. Yes, thank you again. We'll see you again another time.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Bye.
Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai. Hare Krishna.